Welcome to Mi Ka'amchi Yisrael. This week's Parashat contains what might be called the entrance exam into Jewish leadership. As the Jewish people journey through the wilderness, Moshe Rabbeinu finds himself carrying an impossible burden. An entire nation looks to him for guidance, direction, and answers, and Borei Olam responds by instructing him to gather 70 elders who will help shoulder the responsibility of leading Klal Yisrael. But then the Torah adds what appears to be an unnecessary phrase: gather for me 70 men from the elders of Israel, whom you know to be the elders of the people. Why the extra words? Surely Moshe knew who the elders were. Chazal reveals something extraordinary. These were not simply respected men. They were not selected because of their wisdom or their eloquence. They weren't selected because of even their prominence. These were the Jewish overseers in Egypt who had willingly stepped forward when their brothers could bear no more. When the Egyptians demanded impossible quotas, these men could have protected themselves. Instead, they absorbed the punishment. They took the beatings. They carried the pain. They looked at the suffering around them and said, "Let it fall on me instead." Borei Olam said to Moshe, those are my leaders, not the people who know how to stand above others, the people who know how to stand beside others, not the people who seek honor, the people willing to carry another Jew's burden. Because in the Torah's view, greatness is not measured by how much a person can carry for himself. Greatness is measured by how much he's willing to carry for someone else. And sometimes Borei Olam gives a person an opportunity to carry a burden that was never meant to be his. And most people walk away. A few extraordinary people, they step forward. And when they do, they often discover that the burden they thought they were carrying for someone else was in fact transforming their own lives as well. And this reminds me of a remarkable story. A number of years ago, a man named Reb Shalom found himself in the Brussels airport in Europe. While waiting, he struck up a conversation with a visibly worried Yid who had just arrived from Eretz Yisrael. The man explained that he had come for only one reason. His young son, Lo Aleinu, was gravely ill. Doctors had discovered a serious heart condition and instructed him to fly immediately to Brussels, where specialists could perform a complex surgery that might save the boy's life. As Reb Shalom listened, his heart sank. The father was frightened, exhausted, overwhelmed. And then Reb Shalom asked a simple question: "Do you already have the money needed for the surgery?" So the man lowered his eyes. Of course, not even close. The cost would be approximately 150,000 USD. He had gathered whatever savings he could. Relatives had helped a little, but the overwhelming majority of the money simply didn't exist. And without payment, the hospital, of course, would not proceed. Imagine that scene, Lo Aleinu. A father standing thousands of miles from home. His child desperately needs surgery. Time is running out, and there's no way to pay for it. At that moment, Reb Shalom faced a choice. He could offer sympathy. He could offer encouragement. He could wish the man bonne chance, good luck. Or he could do what the 70 elders had done so many years earlier. He could decide that another man's burden would become his own. He looked at father and said, "Don't worry, I'll get you the money." The man stared at him in disbelief. $150,000? Reb Shalom was not a wealthy philanthropist. This was an enormous sum. Yet within hours, he had broken into a savings bank, borrowed what he needed, and placed the money into the father's hands so the boy could immediately begin treatment. The surgery was, Baruch Hashem, successful. The child survived, and life moved forward, or so it seemed. The grateful father eventually approached Reb Shalom and admitted that despite all his efforts, he had no realistic way of repaying such a tremendous debt anytime soon. Reb Shalom smiled and told him, "Your son is healthy, that's all I need. Go home in peace." The father never forgot those words, and years passed. The boy recovered completely, and Baruch Hashem, he grew into a fine young man, a serious Ben Torah. Meanwhile, life brought Reb Shalom his own challenges. His daughter became seriously ill. Borei Olam, in his kindness, granted her a complete recovery. But years later, another struggle emerged. She reached the age that we all know of shidduchim, and suddenly doors began closing. People heard she had once been seriously ill, and questions were asked. Suggestions, well, they disappeared. Months became years, and the family was heartbroken. Anyone who has waited for a shidduch knows that unique ache, the endless hope, the disappointment, the tefillot, one day unable to bear the pain any longer. Reb Shalom traveled to the Kotel. Standing before the ancient stones, he poured out his heart. Ribono shel olam, you carried me through the first challenge. Please carry us through this one. Please send my daughter the shidduch that she deserves. And for hours he stood there praying, crying, finally emotionally exhausted. He turned to leave, and as he walked away from the Kotel, he suddenly felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned around, and standing before him was a familiar face, a warm smile, eyes he hadn't seen in many years. Do you remember me? It took only a moment. The father from Brussels, the two embraced, and each overwhelmed to see one another. The man immediately noticed Reb Shalom's red eyes and asked, what was wrong? Reb Shalom shared everything, his daughter's illness, the recovery, the painful shidduch struggle, the years of waiting. The father listened carefully. Then he became very quiet. Finally, he says, my son is also struggling with shidduchim. He's a wonderful young man, but because of the heart surgery he underwent as a child, many families hesitate. The two men looked at each other. A possibility neither had imagined began to emerge. Inquiries were made, meetings were arranged, and before long, something absolutely extraordinary happened. The young man whose life had been saved through Reb Shalom's sacrifice became the chatan of Reb Shalom's daughter. Years earlier, a frightened father had arrived in Brussels carrying a burden he couldn't bear, and one Jew stepped forward and said, let me help you carry him. At the time, it seemed like an act of kindness and chesed, just a generous loan, a moment of compassion, but Borei Olam was writing a much larger story. Because when a Yid sincerely carries another burden, Borei Olam never forgets. Decades may pass, the story may seem finished, but in heaven, the story is often just beginning. Ladies and gentlemen, the overseers in Mitzrayim and Egypt, they didn't know they were becoming leaders. Reb Shalom didn't know he was meeting his future son-in-law. And perhaps that is why life is so profound. Because Borei Olam rarely tells us which moments matter. He doesn't place a sign over someone's head. He doesn't announce, pay attention, this is one of those important ones. Instead, he hides eternity inside ordinary moments. Conversation, a favor, a sacrifice, a stranger, and then he waits to see what we're going to do. Will we keep walking or will we stop? The 70 elders stopped. Reb Shalom stopped. And because they stopped, a future changed. Generations, ladies and gentlemen, changed. And perhaps that is what this week's Parashat is whispering to each of us. The next person carrying a burden may be far more important than you realize. The next interruption may not be an interruption at all. The next favor may be the beginning of a story that only Borei Olam can see. Because really the truth is that we never know when we're standing in our own Brussels airport. We never know when a seemingly ordinary moment is about to become a chapter in a much larger history. All we know is that Borei Olam places people in our path. And in that moment, heaven asks only one question. Will you walk past or will you carry the burden? And if we choose correctly, perhaps years later, or maybe even after 120, Borei Olam will show us what he was writing all along. Thank you for joining us on Mi Ka'amchi Yisrael, and Shabbat Shalom U'Mevorach.